32-year-old detective Daniel Rivera, slightly deafened by the noise of shooting at the shooting range, pressed the button, and the target began to approach his starting position. How many times had he heard something like, "Hey Danny, put on your headphones, you'll go deaf"? But he always neglected to protect his ears, answering something in the spirit, but in reality, will there be headphones at hand too? He deliberately accustomed his ears to the sound of gunfire, at first twitching his head and blinking like a loony, but gradually getting used to it and not being afraid of anything. The target was approaching and stopped at the very partition separating the shooter from the shooting range. Daniel looked at her busily. A full-length silhouette of a man loomed on the canvas, and this man was armed with a knife. His grimace was bared. His eyes were dangerously narrowed. 5 hits went straight into the heart, and the 6th hit the middle of the chest. Not bad. It's not bad at all. Daniel looked at his Desert Eagle and cowboy-style blue on the barrel of the gun. "Are you still playing games, Danny?" The man turned around and, a little embarrassed by his childish act, smiled. "Hi, Leia." "Well, not really, so I'm practicing." A mulatto woman named Layla Blake, Danny's age, nodded and smiled snow white. "Yes, he asked to come with you. A new case is coming up and you won't believe it. The legs have been stretching all the way from Harlem." Danny pulled the bolt of the pistol, made sure there was no cartridge, and then put the weapon in his chest holster. He threw a sports jacket with a police chevron on top and, on leaving the shooting range, lightly hugged Layla, whom he always called Leia, by the waist. She allowed him to do this despite the fact that all the dots had been set in their relationship for a long time. They were partners, friends, and no more, the best in management. The man let the girl into the elevator, then entered himself. "Harlem? Something interesting. After all, your alma mater." "Yes, but I moved to Queens with my mom when I was 10. I haven't come back since. It's been 23 years. The man looked into Leia's eyes. "Do you think nostalgia can capture you? Do you feel something like that in your soul?" The girl's gaze was more meaningful than sad. She smiled again and waved her hand. "No, I think not, and you stop taking care of me. So the guys at the department call you Danny's mom." The man also smiled. "Yes, I know, and you're still little Lulu." The elevator stopped, and the partners went out into the corridor. They had to go all the way to the end, where their boss's office was set up. Behind the oak door, at a large table, their boss was smoking a cigar as usual, flicking the ashes right on the floor. He was moderately fat and moderately short, by the way. That's what he said about himself. Striped shirt, gray trousers, and suspenders as an addition to the wardrobe. When Layla and Daniel entered the office, their boss was apparently trying to blow a smoke ring out of his mouth, opening his mouth in the manner of a beached fish. Daniel immediately started talking. "Good afternoon, Chief." Layla was more restrained. She came close to the table, sat down on a chair. "I brought my partner, Chief. Did you want to assign us a new investigation?" The boss sat down more comfortably, looked from the smiling Daniel to the serious Layla. "Whatever you say, the partners presented a certain contrast, both in appearance and in their skills and abilities. Daniel is a big, kind man, an excellent athlete and shooter, a multiple winner of competitions between police departments in karate, and an excellent analyst and criminologist." Behind his smile, as if permanently glued to his face and behind his kind gaze, there was scrupulousness and an extraordinary mind. Layla, on the contrary, smiled less often and looked at the world more seriously, but at the same time small and pleasant in appearance, smart. No doubt she was smart, but at the same time she had the unique ability of an empath to experience other people's events with her mind in the world of sensations. She felt something that most people would not feel. I was looking for the essence in everything and believed in otherworldly forces. It was funny, but the boss relied on her instincts in many matters. That's why he made them partners, different but complementary to each other. Daniel also approached the table. "You know, Mr. Peters, we are always ready for any case." The chief frowned and took a drag on his cigar, blowing smoke towards the window. I know. I also know that last time, if someone hadn't opened fire, we would have done without lengthy explanations with lawyers and other crooks." Daniel didn't stop smiling. "Chief, but I didn't have a choice. And the detention was carried out according to all the rules, one can say brilliantly. I scared everyone away." And Layla Daniel put his hand on her shoulder. "Wrap the flippers to the main villain." I know. Enough. In short." The boss ducked under the table and took out a thick folder from the closet. "Here, take a look. These are the materials of the main case. In addition, the FBI and, oddly enough, the Vice Police are indirectly involved in the same case." Layla pulled the case to herself, looked up in surprise. "The FBI?" The chief nodded. "Yes, there is something connected with the kidnapping, although so far only a missing person has been reported. Besides, anyway, Leia, I've given you a case. Then your worries, there's everything you need." Daniel squeezed the girl's shoulder a little harder, unnoticed by the boss. "Mr. Peters, how did the Vice Squad get in there? Don't they usually do nothing but chase topless girls on the beach?" The boss looked into Leia's eyes. There was a question in them. Mischievous sparks burned somewhere in the distance. Then he looked at Daniel, who was smiling, but his eyes were cold. "Okay, Detectives Blake and Rivera, you have received the case. Keep in touch with me personally. The first results are in 2 days. And keep in mind, the FBI is firmly on our tail. We have to solve this case, otherwise it may turn out that we will dig the whole well of shit, and then the FBI will rest on its laurels at the very end. That's it." Daniel and Leia decided to start this business by studying the materials. "The boss is a bit nervous today." Daniel was drinking coffee in the front seat of their official Ford Interceptor. He leaned comfortably on the steering wheel. "And for a reason, look at this." Leia took out a sheet of scanned photos from the file. They depicted 4 guys. They were clearly not Caucasians. There was nothing more specifically to say about their appearance. All 4 guys were beheaded. "Holy shit. Leia, you can't do this right away, because I just finished my 7th donut 5 minutes ago. So, very interesting. Listen, they have some kind of marks on their bodies. Or scratches?" Layla took out a lens in a black plastic frame from a small drawer and looked at the photos. "You know, it looks more like some kind of writing. I'm sure the experts have preserved more distinct images. We will need to work with them." "Necessarily? Do you think it could be a ritual murder?" Leia flipped through the file. "It could be anything. It's too early to tell, but this version cannot be dismissed. Although, it could have been something else. Do you remember when we were digging up the case of the idiot priest who tortured 2 prostitutes in his basement?" Daniel took a loud sip of coffee and almost choked. The grounds from the bottom flew straight down his throat. Yes, he drove the prodigal spirit out of them, or whatever he said." The girl looked at Daniel seriously. Not a prodigal spirit, but a demon of fornication, debauchery in general. After all, I talked to that priest during the interrogation. He was absolutely sure of what he was doing. He claimed that the demon himself was talking to him from the body of one of the victims. Daniel finished his coffee and crumpled the cup, trying to stuff it into a folding ashtray. Yes, and I spoke specifically with the victims. They didn't look like demons, not at all. Ordinary girls who earn their living in an unusual way in the light of modern morality. Simply, Leia didn't let him finish. Yeah, they earn money by secretly trading in something forbidden, involving new girls in prostitution who came to New York to fulfill their dreams. And demons, my dear Danny, that's why they hide in people in order to enslave their soul, and then force them to act in their own interests. Demons, they're older than anything. He picked up the book and looked at the cover. It showed a dashing, handsome blonde man with a powerful chin, surrounded by beautiful curvy blondes in mini-skirts, kicking some overgrown villain into a knockout. The inscription on the cover read, Detective Borduel Pigafo, winner and lucky. Daniel wasn't smiling. He was looking at me seriously, but with interest. My God, the winner and the lucky one. It's necessary. And who gives such stupid names as Borduel Pigafo? The detective repeated to himself again, Borduel Pigafo, and flipped through the book. The text was accompanied by illustrations to match the one on the cover. And in the end, oh my God, it's out of the question. A whole chapter called Pigafo's Advice. Don't get caught, intern. The very first of the tips discouraged and really made Daniel laugh. God created all people different and cult-leveled everyone. Never keep the safety on your weapon. Life is more expensive than following the rules. Your mother. Daniel went to Layla with the book. Leia, look at the book I found. An outspoken jerk mows down like a detective, so he also gives advice. Borduel Pigafo, damn it. The saleswoman and Layla exchanged an understanding glance. There was something in their gaze that they alone understood, but Daniel did not understand. Surely the saleswoman decided that Daniel was the husband of this beautiful mulatto baby. The saleswoman herself also liked Layla very much. In both ways, she winked at her and looked at Daniel. The adventures of Detective Pigafo are a whole cycle for teenagers from 12 to 15 years old. Are you very interested in this book? Layla tucked the book she had bought for herself under her arm, laughed, and pulled Daniel out by the sleeve of his jacket. The same man was already ready to give the saleswoman a short rebuke, but Leia did not give him a chance. Well, what did you buy there? Daniel muttered under his breath. Detective fucking Pigafo. Borduel. This is his mother. Layla put a paperback book on her lap. On it was written in red letters, The Witchcraft of Ancient Haiti. Daniel looked at the book and then at Layla. Honey, don't start that. What does ancient Haiti have to do with it? The woman flipped through the cover. You know, I have a feeling. She took out the criminal case file again and opened the folders, found photos of the decapitated men. Take a closer look. They are not Africans or even African Americans. The skin tone is too light. Look closely here. The arms and legs are a little darker, and the torso, although dark, is lighter. And I'm sure they're Haitians. Daniel raised an eyebrow. What makes you think that? She took out the lens again and pressed it against the photo in the groin area of one of the poor fellows. Take a look for yourself. Daniel took a closer look at the photo, but still made a joke. That's also what I needed to see some Haitian staring at his stuff. He mentally acknowledged Leia's point and had already agreed that the Haitians were the ones in the photo. Now, if I were offered to look at a photo of some beautiful mulatto girl like this. Fuck you, asshole. Did you see it? The lens magnified the tattoo, the inscription on the inner thigh of one of the decapitated. The inscription consisted of 3 words: the best lover of Port-au-Prince. Wow, he's not just a Haitian but also lived in the capital. Probably an illegal immigrant. Fly more than 2,000 kilometers over the Atlantic and find the end here. Leia looked at Daniel. You're not usually that poetic or sentimental. Nevertheless, it is true. Let's go to the experts. We need to deal with the inscriptions on their bodies. And you know, I'm sure this book will open our eyes to a lot. Layla stroked the softcover on her lap. The expert, a thin coxcomb, sat at the table and ran his eyes over Layla, dressed in a black short jacket and a tight black skirt. Her blouse was coquettishly unbuttoned at the top button. A lock of hair had escaped from its styling and gave the woman's face a certain romantic image. If it wasn't for the big guy behind her back. His gaze, cold and striking, slightly reduced the expert's agility. He took a bite of the hot dog and rubbed his forehead with his free hand. I understand what you're asking. You'll have to wait a bit. You know, there is a lot of work. The expert got up and went to the filing cabinet. He searched, put aside some receipts, then reached into a large closet and took out a plastic file with photos. Here you are. He handed the folder to the woman he liked. You can read it right here in my office. In the meantime, I'm going to get some coffee. On the way out, he looked back and briefly glanced at the silhouette of a woman leaning towards the table. Oh, she's a good beast. Daniel waited until the expert came out, went to the table and sat down in his chair. Yeah, it's not exactly like the laboratory of our experts. A warm place. The woman was flipping through photographs with large images showing inscriptions on the bodies of dead, beheaded Haitians. Compared, this is the FBI's expert laboratory. I'm surprised that the expert turned out to be so friendly at all. Daniel smiled. This is your little victory, Leia, isn't it? He never took his eyes off your charms. She pushed one of the photos towards Daniel. Look, it's very interesting. The Haitian was lying on the table in the morgue, belly down. His back was covered with scars as if he had been whipped with a whip, and an inscription was made on the lower back with incisions. Weighed and sold to Daddy Legba. Underneath the inscription, a face was scratched out under a hat and with a pipe in its mouth. Clumsily, schematically, but quite understandable. Daniel looked up from the photo. I'm sure that the rest of the dead have something similar depicted. Daddy Legba, I wonder who this is. It would be interesting to question him. Already downstairs in the car, Leia pulled the book she had bought onto her lap, flipped through it, and pointed her finger at the dark image of an elderly, wrinkled man, wrinkling his face with a smile. The painted man was smoking a pipe, puffing out clouds of smoke over a battered, wide-brimmed hat. Here, take a look. This is Papa Legba, one of the highest spirits in the Voodoo tradition. The woman read the entry under the image. Papa Legba is one of the most important and revered Loa in the Voodoo tradition. He is known as the guardian of crossroads and the mediator between the human world and the spirit world. Without his permission and blessing, it is impossible to establish contact with other Loa, so all rituals and ceremonies begin with addressing him. Daniel grimaced, and the usual devilry for his partner Layla Blake began again. "Loa, what is this?" "That's what they call spirits in Haiti. It seems to me that this case is not quite in the paradigm of real life, perhaps." Daniel waved it away. "Leia, just don't start. Spirits, voodoo, Haiti. For sure, these 3 dead people were doing something murky. Maybe they were trading something, by the way. I wouldn't be surprised what they were. And Papa Legba is their supplier, boss or pimp. They did something to annoy him and then went to the other world." Daniel looked at the ceiling of the car and crossed himself. "That's all. Well, it wasn't the spirit that killed them." Layla slammed the book shut. "It goes without saying, but perhaps the killer acted for some reason related to bloody cults, sacrifice, and something not yet clear. I suggest that we consider ritual murder as the main version and start hyping it. You know, we're going to have to go to Harlem anyway, starting with the address where the bodies were found. Agree?" Daniel nodded. "Yes, but now I suggest we go home. Look at the clock. It's already 10 o'clock in the evening. I'll drop you off, then I'll go to my place." Layla yawned. Yes, I hadn't noticed how today had gone. At night, Leia suffered from a nightmare. Strangely enough, she dreamed of the notorious Papa Legba. He was old, but strong, tall and black. His clothes, an antique doublet, had rotted away at the edges, and an old wrinkled face was hidden under a hat. He slowly raised his head and hissed, "Don't you dare bother me." Leia tried to run away from him. Sometimes it even worked, but the demon was in front of her again every time. In her dream, she felt a foul smell, the stench of something burnt and sweet. Now, Papa Legba began to speak in the voice of the expert she and Danielle had seen in the evening. He stretched out his arms to her, tried to grab her, and he succeeded. He touched her, hugged her, slobbered on her lips, and she just couldn't move. Daniel did not wake up immediately and did not immediately understand what was wrong. I looked around. The room was dark, but something was wrong. That's the thing. He rolled over on a large double bed, climbed over the girl sleeping next to him, and took the phone from the bedside table. "Leia, hi. Did you see how much—" The voice on the phone was breaking. Daniel realized that Layla Blake, his partner, was crying. "Danny, please come soon. I'm scared." I didn't have to persuade or ask twice. Daniel got out of bed and went to the shower to brush his teeth. Then he began to get dressed in the bedroom. "Danny, honey, are you going somewhere?" The girl, by the way, a beautiful blonde, just like on the cover of a book about Bordeaux Pigafo, sat down on the bed and covered herself with a blanket up to her chest. "Yes, dear, the service, you know. Come on, get back in bed and close your eyes. I'll try to be back by morning. If anything, just shut the door." The girl wanted to say something sarcastic, but Daniel was already at the front door, and after a few moments, the girl heard a bang on the door jamb. He was gone. Half an hour later, Daniel was at Layla's. Her tear-stained and scared face discouraged him a little. He came in and hugged the woman. "What happened? You can't be left alone for an hour." The mulatto wrapped herself in a silk robe, holding its hem in a fist at her neck. "Danny, I'm very scared. I think I know who is opposing us. I had a nightmare, and I woke up. Then I went to the kitchen, and there—" The man walked past his partner and immediately headed into the kitchen, trying to turn on the light on the way. Leia followed. The light is not working. Something burned out there." Daniel grunted. "We'll figure it out." What he saw in the kitchen was very surprising. Kitchen cupboards were smashed and knocked off the wall, doors were torn off, and a mountain of broken dishes lay on the floor. There was a strong smell of burning. Daniel went to the stove and checked if the gas was turned off. He looked at the open window in surprise and then at Leia. "What happened here?" Layla started to speak, but her every word seemed more and more like nonsense to Daniel. At first, she told about the nightmare, about how Papa Legba attacked her, demanded that she not interfere with him. Then she woke up and smelled burning, then got up and went to the kitchen to drink water and saw the mess. She couldn't explain anything or offer a more or less logical version. "Layla, calm down. A nightmare is understandable. You yourself read about your voodoo schmooda at night, but the route in the kitchen..." There was a window open, and the girl nodded her head, but looked at Daniel as if he were a fool. "Yes, and in your opinion, someone climbed into my window, broke into my kitchen, and disappeared, right? Well, why not?" "That's an excellent theory, Detective Rivera. But there's only one significant discrepancy. I live on the 18th floor. Do you understand?" Daniel was silent, but not for long. He had to help somehow, at least try to instill confidence in Layla. "Listen, let's close the window first and clean up a bit. I will help. If you want, I'll stay with you. And then we'll think about it together, okay? I'll listen to you, and we'll find the answer together." He looked into his partner's eyes and ran his palm over her cheek. "Cheer up, Detective Blake. What did you say there? Daddy Legba? Or a mess?" Layla smiled trustingly. Everything became as before. Mischievous eyes and a snow-white smile. This pleased Daniel a little, but the question of the destruction in the kitchen remained open. While cleaning, he looked at the windowsill and found a piece of fluff and 2 dark hairs. "Leia, take a look." He pointed out his find to her. "It looks very much like cat hair. You know what? I think you probably didn't close the window, or you thought it was closed. This mewing beast snuck in and made a complete row." The girl looked at Daniel incredulously. "A cat?" The man chuckled. "Of course. My Aunt Clarice had 2 cats on her farm in Ohio. Do you remember when we were working on the Satanists case? Well, when they attacked me? Well, these are all flowers compared to what I went through when those 2 cats attacked. And I still don't know why. What's in their head? Or maybe a bird flew into you and the cat started chasing it all over the kitchen. But I didn't hear anything like that. So what? Leia, understand, I'm not trying to dress you up in a crazy robe, but it happens. Nightmare, fatigue, sleep paralysis. Yes, you never know what else." Layla gradually came to her senses. "God, while I was waiting for you, I suffered such fear. It's still a nightmare. What should I do with the light now?" She was shouting from the kitchen, and suddenly the light came on. Daniel came back. "You just had a safety lock go off." Layla turned on to the coffee maker. "I'm going to make some coffee. You know, Danny, sometimes I really feel like I'm touched. In everything we do, I'm trying to find some kind of devilry. Sometimes it seems to me that everything falls out of my hands. Should I go on vacation or retire?" Daniel was drinking coffee, sitting at the table, trying not to lean on it. It seems that one leg was broken. "Resign? Well, then come with me. And why? Let's farm somewhere. Have you ever milked cows? But seriously, I do not know a single person in our department who would feel other people the way you do. You feel people's thoughts, their desires. After all, we solved the last 2 cases thanks to you, so don't get all worked up." Daniel quickly finished his coffee. "Come on, Miss Blake, finish your coffee and let's go put you to bed." The girl finished her drink. "I'll lie down on my own too, Mommy Danny." Half an hour later, Leia was lying on her bed, and Daniel was on a cot he knew in the hallway. He spoke softly. "Leia, are you asleep?" The girl answered. "No, I'm falling asleep. Actually, I'm getting up soon. Are we going to Harlem tomorrow?" Daniel yawned. Already today, Harlem opened up to Leia with new colors. When they were driving here with Daniel, the girl was nervous. Memories from childhood, about moving, about my mother surfaced in the nude. Harlem, in memory, was sunny and welcoming. But over the years, everything has changed. Has it become somehow darker, or what? Daniel drove the car down the avenue. "So, Montreal, 12. Here's 15. And that little house across the street is like 17. That's the address. Look, the operatives have already been there. The courtyard area was covered with forbidden yellow signs. The doors of a small house were sealed with yellow and black striped adhesive tape. Well, yes, there are no options. Let me look around inside, and will you go through the neighbors, or do you have another option?" Leia nodded. "You know, I know this address. I just remembered that now. Just like a flash in my head. My mother's friend, Aunt Hannah, lived in that house across the street. You know, I think I'll take this opportunity." Of course. Daniel parked the car and followed Leia. "Let's go in together. We're partners. I don't want you to be, well, disappointed on your own." Leia ignored his last words, but then realized how right her partner was. The yard near the house was neglected. A high uncut lawn, a torn mosquito net on the door, and the door itself was somewhat skewed. However, the house was residential. A clear, accented voice came from inside. "Who's there? What do you want in my yard?" Leia didn't really want to introduce herself officially. Nevertheless, she was on duty. "Hello, I'm Detective Blake, Layla Blake. We have a few questions." The door opened, and a plump African-American woman in a bathrobe and apron appeared in front of the detectives, with a colorful turban wrapped around her head. She squinted, blinked, and looked back at Layla. Layla Blake. Aren't you the daughter of Cecilia Blake and that eccentric mother of his, Rodrigo Blake?" Layla smiled meekly. "Yes, in person. And you, if I'm not mistaken, are Aunt Hannah." The woman looked Leia up and down. "I remember when you left, how fast time passes, because back then you were running around the yards, and I remember your mother. How is she?" Leia looked into the woman's eyes. "Mom is at St. George's Hospital now. She needs care." "I understand." Aunt Hannah looked at Daniel. "And what kind of snowman is this? Your husband?" Leia smiled and wanted to answer, but Danny beat her to it. "Detective Rivera, we have a few questions for you. About those murdered Haitian drug addicts?" Leia glanced briefly at Daniel. She was right. All the dead were Haitians. "Yes, exactly. Can we go inside and talk?" The woman nodded and led the detectives into the kitchen, poured strong, slightly cooled coffee, and sat down on a chair. "Times have changed a lot. Harlem is no longer the African dream of American splendor. Something has changed in people. They come and live, and often I don't know what their neighbors' names are. So, what did you want to know?" Suddenly, a young guy came out into the kitchen dressed in a long t-shirt almost to his knees and half-lowered trousers. He gesticulated with his hands in an interesting way, spoke a mixture of rap with MTV and some kind of jargon. He glanced at the detectives. "Hi, Mom. Who are these people?" He pointed at them with his ring finger and without waiting for an answer, jumped out into the yard. Aunt Hannah sighed. "This is my youngest son, Malik. These damn Haitians are selling dope here, and at night they gather on the outskirts of our block in an abandoned power plant building. God only knows what they're doing there. And my son..." The woman did not finish, realizing that she might blurt out something superfluous, and simply waved her hand away. Daniel finished his coffee and lightly stepped on Leia's foot under the table, giving her a sign. Then he stood up. "Thanks for the coffee and cooperation. You've been very helpful." Leia stood up and said goodbye to Aunt Hannah. Secretly, in her heart, she thought that everything was the same here and people would be the same as in childhood. But things have really changed. She headed for the car. There was a little noise in my head. Everything became somehow painful. "Well, what do you think, partner?" Daniel was sitting at the wheel and looking at Layla. "You know, I thought there would be something like that. Did you notice how she didn't want to talk about her son? He obviously knows something, or maybe he guesses, or maybe he takes part. I think so too. Are you suggesting that we interrogate this little character from the cartoon Bivs and Butthead?" Daniel shook his head. "I don't think he will tell us anything useful in a simple conversation. And there are no grounds for arrest. Although I'm sure we can easily find a weighty bundle of something like that in his pocket. And by the way, there's our young asshole." Malik was walking along the sidewalk, waving his arms. He did not see Layla and Daniel. In principle, I didn't pay attention to anything at all. Layla followed him with her gaze, remembering that she could have married such an asshole when she was still studying at the police academy. She shook her head. "Let it roll. I suggest we visit the old power plant at night. Maybe we'll find something interesting." Agreed. Daniel was thinking something without sharing his thoughts with Leia. He decided to hedge his bets. The stone room was in semi-darkness, dispersed by the light of thick black candles placed in a circle. A naked man hung upside down in the center of the circle. A chain descended from the ceiling, one end of which was wrapped around the feet. The man's eyes were tied with a black cloth, on which a clumsy and incomprehensible white inscription was made. The man's hands were tied behind his back. He could speak freely. Guys, that's enough. They scared me and I'm good. I'm mine." The suspended man interspersed English with Haitian slang. There was hope in my head, but fear drowned everything out. "Guys, well, I'm serious. Enough." A tall man, hidden under a hoodie, approached him. But it was a man, a beard, braided with dreadlocks, peeked out from under a hood pulled over his face. In his hands, the man held a deep white saucer and a brush. He uttered some words as if he were singing a song, sometimes lowering his voice to a whisper, then raising it to a screech. Red patterns began to appear on the body of the suspended man. There was blood in a white saucer, and a man in a hoodie collected it on a brush, and then smeared the chest and back of the suspended man. He screamed at the touch of the brush. "No need. Who is this? Are you Farouk? No? Listen, I have money at home. I'll bring it. Let me go." But the execution did not stop. Only the singing was replaced by understandable speech. "You broke our code. Daddy Legba doesn't need your life anymore. He wants your soul. You will nourish our father with your soul before he appears to us. It's all your fault." He began to sprinkle droplets of blood from the brush onto the face of the suspended man. He was twitching, trying to dodge, but he couldn't do it. "No, you are welcome. No, well, don't. Daddy Legba will guide you from one world to another. He is the master of the gate. Our father and master. Remember his name when your spirit begins to leave your body." A knife appeared in the executioner's hand, and he put it to the victim's throat. But the most unexpected thing happened. The door leading to the basement was torn off its hinges with a powerful kick. The soldiers of the tactical squad rushed into the basement one by one. The doorway was illuminated by the light of flashlights, which simply tore the gloom to shreds. The man in the hoodie retreated behind the suspended man, covering himself with his body and holding a knife to his throat. "Freeze! Don't you dare move!" The voice of the man in the hoodie seemed quite ordinary to everyone, even a little weak. Although I tried to give him strength. "Yeah, of course. Get out of here. I'm going to kill him. I'm going to kill that damn son of a bitch." Daniel came out from behind the commander of the tactical squad, followed by Leia. Still, it's not for nothing that I decided to call a tactical squad. The screams of this poor guy can be heard all over the block. He turned his head towards the hooded villain. "Put the knife down, asshole. You won't kill anyone. Are you going to the electric chair?" Daniel kept his hands up, but at the same time slowly approached. "Stop! Stop! Stay back!" The criminal stretched out his hand with a knife, and immediately a shot was fired. An experienced fighter from the tactical squad shot the attacker in the chest with a traumatic pistol. "Your mother. It hurts." The arrest was carried out brilliantly. The man was pinned down and his rights were immediately read out, but they were in no hurry to remove his hood. Chief Peters was smoking his cigar again and looking up from the table at Leia and Daniel. "And who was it?" Daniel chuckled. "It was that damn idiot Malik. This little asshole was 30-something years old and desperately mowed down underage. Can you imagine, Chief?" Leia nodded. "When I saw him, I immediately thought of something like that. In addition, even when my mother and I left that neighborhood, Hannah Blackmore already had a younger son, and his name was I remember for sure that everything was so stirred up in my memory. And the murders?" Daniel waited for Leia to say something, but she didn't say anything, and then he took the floor. The chief invited them both to sit down. "Yes, there's a family of jerks there. Hannah Blackmore was married to a certain Jean-Pierre Lafont, a Haitian. We've made some inquiries. This guy had very extensive connections among the dealers of illegal drugs. Besides, he enjoyed authority also because, how should I put it?" Daniel looked at Leia, and she continued. "He was a priest of a secret voodoo cult based on sacrifices. They considered an ancient spirit named Papa Legbe to be their god. Apparently, Jean-Pierre Lafont passed on this knowledge to Malek Blackmore, introduced him to the case. But the murders were not of a ritual nature. It's all an entourage for jerks, a common act of intimidation of competitors and traders. Well, you know." Chief Peters, pleased with what was happening, got up, stretched, and went to the window. "Okay, very good. I'm very pleased with you. But it wasn't a hard case, was it? Come to me tomorrow at the beginning of the working day. There's something more interesting." Daniel went to his place to taste the same delights of life as Borduel Pigafo. The image was insistently ingrained in the man's thoughts and did not give rest. Pigafo, motherfucker, what a stupid name. And Leia was in for an unusual and not entirely pleasant surprise. She entered her apartment as usual, closed the door, and took off her jacket on the way. She went into the kitchen and was stunned. The kitchen was trashed again, water was flowing from the sink to the floor, the window was open. But that wasn't what shocked me. A book she had bought at a bookstore was lying on the floor. It was open to a page with a picture of Papa Legba. The image was tattered, as if someone had dragged a clawed paw across the page. Leia shook her head, walked across the kitchen, stepped over the book, and looked out the window. "If this cat doesn't stop harassing me, then I'll call the knackers." Turning around, she screamed in fright. There was a cat sitting on the kitchen floor, a real, life-worn, hefty cat with its fur burned on its side. He was brazenly urinating on a book, scraping the floor with his paw. Leia could smell the burning again, but not so clearly. It turns out that someone has been trashing my kitchen for the second time. Well, let's get acquainted.